Good morning, everybody, and welcome to worship. The Lord is here. His Spirit is with us. Now, this morning, I want us to think about being ready for things. So while I share my screen, you might see the question appearing. The question is, are you ready? Now, if you are in Year 6, and especially if you're in Mrs. Anderson's class, I think this might still be on the wall. Mrs. Anderson has a message that says, are you ready? And in Year 6, they do something really exciting. If you've had a big brother or sister in Year 6, you'll know that they go on a residential trip, a trip where you sleep away from home at Condover Hall and do lots of exciting things, lots of challenges, things that you might not have done before, things like climbing and balancing at great heights, things that I would find a real challenge. And the leaders say, are you ready? And the children reply, we were born ready. Which is great because that means we're confident and we're ready to have a go. So this morning, that's what we're going to be thinking about. We'll start with thinking about being ready for school. Are you ready for school? So this morning, we do all kinds of things before we come to school, don't we? We have our breakfast, and I've just had my cup of tea and my slice of toast. So I've got my fuel. I've cleaned my teeth. My coat's hanging up ready. Shoes. Always good to wear a matching pair of shoes. Now, if you saw me yesterday, you might have very politely noticed, because nobody mentioned it, although I did tell a few people when I discovered it, that yesterday I had two different shoes on. They weren't a pair. They're nearly the same style, but one, it's hard to tell in this light, isn't it? Which is why I had the problem. One is blue and one is black. So yesterday I wore odd shoes and it made me feel a bit funny all day, actually. So today I'm going to take time and not rush and make sure that my shoes match. And this is part of getting ready, isn't it? Sometimes we just have to slow down and take our time. Yesterday, Mrs. Hodgson told us the parable of the yeast. And for yeast to work in bread, to make the bread rise, you just have to wait and be patient. You can't put the yeast in the dough and then think, right, come on, I want to bake my bread now, because it won't rise. It needs time. And we need time sometimes, don't we, to get ready for things. So in the other pictures, you can see somebody making themselves look smart in their uniform. And we're not bringing lots of things to school at the moment, but you might be packing your packed lunch. And then the last picture has got something going on inside our heads. It's got an active brain. Are you ready for learning? Have you got the right mindset? Have you been thinking about your prefrontal cortex and getting it ready so that it can really concentrate and help you with your work and make good, wise choices? Now today we are going to have a story, a parable, about 10 bridesmaids. And in the story, 5 of them can be described as wise and 5 as foolish. Now that might remind you of another parable. Have you heard wise and foolish before in the parable? That's right, the 2 house builders. The wise man built his house on the rock and the foolish man built his house on his sand. He didn't prepare well, he didn't get ready well, did he? He rushed and didn't dig foundations and his house collapsed. Well, today we're thinking about these 10 bridesmaids. Now you can see they're looking excited. They've got their best clothes on and they're all holding a little lamp. So in those days, it was customary in the Jewish tradition that if there was a wedding, the bridegroom would walk to meet the bride and collect her and take her to the wedding party. And she would be escorted by these bridesmaids. And you never quite knew when the bridegroom was going to arrive. It might have been in the afternoon, or it might have been in the evening, or even later on. So you had to be prepared. So these women have got little lamps, little oil lamps. And you can see that one of them, the one in the red dress, has got something hanging from her belt. She's got a little vessel, a kind of jug. I wonder what you think might be in that jug. There's a close-up picture of it. That's right, it's extra oil. So if the oil in the lamp runs out, she can top up and pour some more oil in to keep the lamp burning, because they would need the lamps to guide the way to the wedding party. There wouldn't have been electric street lights like we have on our streets, so they had to keep their lamps burning. Now, in this particular story, the bridegroom was coming quite late, and the women were waiting outside the bride's house, got quite sleepy. You can see one of them's fast asleep there. She's kind of laid down, hasn't she? And they waited and waited. And as they waited, some of their lamps ran out of oil. And eventually they were woken up by a cry of, "He's coming! The bridegroom is coming!" And they jumped up and thought, "Ah, brilliant, we're ready to take that journey now." The women who'd brought the vessels, the little jars with the spare oil, poured it into the lamp and topped up the lamp. And 5 of the women had been wise enough to prepare for the journey. They'd brought extra oil. And then you can see the women on the left saying, "Oh no, we're not going to have enough oil. We never knew the bridegroom was going to arrive this late. Please, can you give us some of your oil?" But the wise women said, "Well, we're sorry, but if we give you our oil, we're not going to have enough for ourselves. Why don't you pop to the shops and you can get some oil?" Well, I don't know whether any shops were open at that point, but the 5 women had to set off and go and look for oil somewhere that they could buy. Now, meanwhile, the bridegroom arrived. He collected the bride, and the bridesmaids led them down all the paths to the place where the wedding feast was going to be. And everybody was joyous and full of excitement. And the person who was at the door, the doorkeeper to the wedding, let everybody in and shut the door fast. All the guests were in, everyone who'd been expected. And it took ages for the other 5 foolish bridesmaids to find oil. And by the time they came back, the big oak door was firmly shut, and they knocked on the door. "Let us in, let us in." "No, no more," replied the doorkeeper. "It's full. We're having the wedding and it's already started. You're too late." Now imagine how they felt. They'd got ready, but they hadn't been prepared. They hadn't got everything. They hadn't thought through what they were going to need to do. And that's like us sometimes, isn't it? Getting ready for things, thinking as we go along, what do we need to do? And we might ask ourselves, are you ready to follow Jesus? Now, in the story, you might have already thought this, but the bridegroom, the man who was going to get married, could be thought of as Jesus. And the bridesmaids were like people who follow Jesus. And 5 of them were ready to follow. They'd thought about what they needed to do, and they'd acted sensibly and wisely, made good decisions, and they'd followed Jesus, and they were able to go into the wedding feast, into that special place with him. But the others, they hadn't prepared properly. They just thought, "Oh, well, this'll do." And they hadn't got ready, and they hadn't made those wise decisions, and they didn't go into the wedding, did they? So we might ask ourselves, are you ready to follow Jesus? What kind of things do you think we need to be able to do to follow Jesus? I think listening to stories from the Bible would really help, wouldn't it? Saying our prayers, listening to other people and their experiences, wise words, and also thinking about our Christian values. Now, if you take a minute to look around in your classroom, you can probably find the Christian values. They're in 10 different star shapes. And those values help us to get ready to follow Jesus. Those values help us to slow down and prepare and think, what should I do in this situation? I need to be a good friend. What does that mean? Now, here's a bit of a close-up picture of what the oil lamps might have looked like. And there's a little message there that says, "But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps." So those wise bridesmaids took extra oil in their little jugs with their lamps to make them ready. That picture just helps us to think, are we ready? So today, when you're in school, when you're getting ready for school, when you're playing in the playground, just think, am I following the right way to live? Am I following Jesus's example? Am I thinking about those Christian values? Thinking carefully, just slowing down. Are you ready to live your best life? Yesterday, Mrs. Hodgson said that we are getting ready to live the life that God wants us to do, to fulfill our potential, to be all that God created us to be. And that's part of our job at school, as well as teaching you about maths and English. It's teaching you to live your best life, to make wise choices for yourself and for others. and for the whole world as you get older, because you can make a real difference to people around you everywhere, people near and far. By our choices every day, we can help ourselves to live our best life and to help other people live their best life too. Well, let's finish with a prayer this morning. I'm going to say the words in the lighter type, and you can join in with the bold type, the darker font, which says all. Can you see at the beginning? I'll help you with those words as well. So let's get ready to pray. Dear Lord, in all our travelling, may your footsteps guide us. In our journeying to school and return, may your footsteps guide us. Within our homes and families, may your footsteps guide us. In difficult situations and conflict, may your footsteps guide us. In the travelling of our faith, may your footsteps guide us. As we place our trust in you, may your footsteps guide us. In all our travelling, Lord, may it be your footsteps in which we place our feet. Amen. So think carefully today about whose footsteps you're following in, and make sure you're following a good, wise example. Have a great day, and I hope to see you around school. And today, if you notice, have a look down and see if I've got matching shoes, because I've just found 2 that match today. So that will be an improvement for me. I'll feel much more prepared for my day if I've got the right shoes. Okay, see you later.